Okay, it's day 93, part one, and I tried to do a graphic to explain what I was saying verbally yesterday in front of the Department of Transportation and Department of Energy. So this is a graph of uranium deposits here. I'll put some other maps along these outside where you can see how heavy of a producer that New Mexico is, and obviously that's why Los Alamos laboratories are there right here. And then I put some of the other players that are there. You remember there's a Joule Energy that John Podesta has here with his magic enzyme. And then, of course, Urenco is the company he's dealt with a long time down here in the corner, which is going to be Chiguri from Nigeria. And then Centrus is going to be U.S. Enrichment. Centrus changed their name to U.S. Enrichment because it was a little too descriptive of Bob Mueller, so that happened. And then I put out here customers. So Sandia Lab is going to be a customer of uranium, so is Lawrence Livermore, and so forth. And the whole idea is when Bill Richardson was the governor of New Mexico, and before that, the Secretary of the Department of Energy, they basically came up with this scheme to bring in this Russian highly enriched uranium into the United States through the port of South Carolina, right here. And this, again, is kind of like Navy headquarters, kind of the head of the Confederate Navy. That's where the Confederate War started. A lot of, pride around the Navy, the Hundley, and all the first submarine and all that. And this kind of army of, the South shall rise again kind of attitude here. And that's the nuclear Navy. That's the head of the nuclear Navy in Charleston, right? And so that's why I believe all the highly enriched uranium came in there. And I also believe they thought, this is kind of our birthright here. This is our strategic reserve for our ships at sea. This is our power plant for our aircraft carriers and also our submarines. This is a strategic resource. This highly enriched uranium can power these for these vessels, and the more enriched the uranium is, the longer they can go without servicing. And this is a big deal because you don't want to be going into port, or especially submarines don't want to surface when they don't have to. So it's very important that this Navy identifies this whole supply chain, all the way from how to get the UF6 cylinders there, to the rods, to the cylinders, from the yellow cake, how to get the Saipov truckers, how to crush it, all the way back to the ore in the ground, and actually doing the U.S. Geological Survey all the way back into the ground. So this is a very important supply chain all the way to the Navy, all the way from the ground into the aircraft carrier or submarine. Okay, this kind of reminds you of Teapot Dome in a way, with when the Navy ran on oil, fuel, diesel. So this is why the Navy's so involved in this. They've been involved in strategic reserve ever since World War I, basically. I guess going back to days of coal. And probably, there was a strategic reserve for coal at one point, I'm guessing, for the Navy. So this thinking goes back a long way of the mining resources necessary to power the Navy. And this is why I say the Steve Bannons and the Scaramucci's are so important to this whole equation. They really are the insiders inside the government, kind of a deep state, if you will, that's making sure that these interests are always protected. These mining interests are always protected, primarily mining and oil, as we've said throughout this whole series. So let's look at the Department of Energy, and let's look at the layout here. The heaviest is New Mexico, and that's why you've got John Podesta with Joule Oil there. That's why you've got Urenco down there, and you'll notice the Urenco and Joule plants are extremely close together. Is it really an underground thorium reactor or some other kind of uranium variant reactor that's come out of Los Alamos down here in the corner in Eunice, New Mexico? Is that really what Joule is? Is it kind of this experimental, these different reactors, thorium reactors and so forth? Now we know from previous episodes that I did that there is an active project with getting these Navy bases and Air Force bases and Army bases around the world with their own small uranium reactors. So all of those, I'm using Joule to represent all of those kind of hidden, let's call them deep state or DoD customers that are classified projects. That's what I'm saying is we have no idea how much that is, but that is a key customer. And then there's, of course, the above the ground business with U.S. Enrichment, which is actually going to the different nuclear power plants and so forth. Okay, so what I try to do here is just kind of in a simple arrow, just say here it goes from the ore, and then I tried to tie it in with other episodes I've done. The Krupnik crushers, there's Krupnik crushing, Lambert's crushers there. Krupnik is there crushing his crushers. And then Lambert picks it up here and then gets it to this facility here in Metropolis, Illinois. And that's where it's turned into these cylinders. Once it's on the cylinders, it goes to South Carolina. I'm not sure exactly where the rods are made yet. The Electric Boat does the actual reactors, and I think they're made in Charleston. I'm not sure. I need to do more research, but I think Austell also does it in Mobile, Alabama. I think that's the Jeff Sessions connection to this. But all along the way, what you want to do, as I've said before, is you want to drop off these cylinders in the United States wherever you can. And I really believe that the first program, the reason why I believe megatons to megawatts running from, I think, 1993 to 2005, let's say, which was, this U.S. enrichment was created in about 1998 to do. The reason why I say that they're linked with uranium-1 is because I believe it's the equivalent of driving in, this Russian uranium, driving into the port of South Carolina at Charleston, driving in Brinks truck after Brinks truck of full gold bullion. Okay, and then they say, well, we have to drive this to Lynchburg, Virginia. We're going to meet this FBI agent named Petty John. We have to downblend this at the downblending facility to silver. It's going to cost a lot of money to do that. And I think Hillary just said, wait a minute, let's keep the gold bullion. Let's put it in Fort Knox. In this case, they're going to be putting it at Oak Ridge, or actually what I say is Clarksburg, West Virginia, is where the FBI is storing it. And then we'll backfill. We'll backfill with all this uranium out here. We'll get Mark. We'll call Mark Lambert, and we'll call Krupnik, and we'll crush it. We'll mine it. We'll crush it. We'll get the Saipov truckers. We'll bring these Saipov truckers so that nobody will know about the project. We'll kill them off if anybody talks. We'll bring the yellow cake in, and then we'll spin this. We can either spin it up in Canada, up at Cameco, and Cameco was one of the biggest contractors, the biggest uranium spinner in the world. Cameco has a lot of contracts in Wyoming, so we'll only need a couple of senators. We only need maybe McCain. Got Bill Richardson with New Mexico. We'll put in Martinez, kind of replace him, and then we'll just get Barrasso from Wyoming, and pretty much you're good to go. And all we need to do is get the Senate Armed Services Committee to make sure that this goes through, and we're good to go. But the problem is that there's accounting in all this, and there's the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. Part of the Department of Energy is the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, and they say, wait a minute, hey, you're missing some highly enriched uranium here. Pettijohn was supposed to downblend that over here in Lynchburg, Virginia. Why didn't you downblend it? Where is all the highly enriched uranium? That's what caused the mad dash, I believe, in uranium-1. They thought they had more time. If you look at the cycle, it starts in 2008 here with Lambert, but 2009, excuse me. But then it goes up every year until 2013. It just shoots up with the production of just as much as we can get. And that's how the things like the Bundys happen and the things like Finicum happens and so forth. There's such a mad rush to meet this demand because they've sold off all this highly enriched uranium. Now, I don't know where they've sold it. I don't know if they've sold it internally in the United States to DoD bases around the world and so forth, or around the world for that matter, or foreign navies. It's hard to know exactly without having access to classified information. But one thing's for sure: somebody opened the vault at Fort Knox and was looking for the gold, and it was all gone. And you've got to replace it because a new administration is coming in, and that is why you're seeing every possible thing being thrown in Trump's way. The shutdown, I truly believe, is the real reason is to stop this from coming to light. This is the number one thing that both Democrats and Republicans are completely united on. You can't even get these guys to read a 4-page memo. They don't even want to know about it. They don't want to see it. Because that whole thing, that whole FISA thing, was to stop Trump because they want to stop this. Nobody wants to know about this. So that's the background. I think it's fairly simple. This was to replace all the gold gone from Fort Knox. The only thing different is this whole uranium one was to replace all the uranium that was supposed to be in that was supposed to have gone to these power plants. It never went to the power plants. It never went to megawatts. It went to navies of the world. It went all over to the DoD in terms of these remote power plants and these small reactors.